The real reason you're always mentally tired you slept 7 hours, maybe 8. You didn't run a marathon yesterday. You didn't carry furniture up 3 flights of stairs. You had a normal day, a normal evening. You went to bed at a reasonable hour, and yet here you are, awake, already tired. Tired before the day has even started. You reach for the phone before your feet touch the floor. You're not even fully awake, but somehow your thumb already knows the route. Email, then the news app, then the other one, then back to email, even though nothing has changed in the last 40 seconds. You scroll for a while without really reading anything. Then you put the phone down, sit up, and feel something heavy settle behind your eyes. You go through the morning. You pour the coffee. You sit down for prayer. You open the Bible, or the devotional, or just close your eyes for a moment. And within about 20 seconds, your mind is somewhere else entirely. Tomorrow's meeting. That message you forgot to answer. Something a coworker said last week. The kids. The bills. A conversation that didn't quite end the way you wanted it to. You try to come back. You try again. And there's this quiet, familiar voice in the back of your head that says, "What is wrong with me?" Here's the thing worth naming honestly. This isn't really physical tiredness. You know what physical tiredness feels like. You've done hard work before. This is something different. This is mental, maybe even spiritual. It's the kind of exhaustion that sleep doesn't actually fix. And a lot of faithful Christians live with this every day. They show up to church on Sabbath, they smile, they answer the question, "How are you?" with "Fine, thanks," and they go home and feel the same heaviness waiting for them on Monday morning. They wonder if they're praying wrong, reading wrong, trying hard enough. They quietly assume something must be broken in them that isn't broken in everybody else. But maybe that's not the right diagnosis. Before we reach for another productivity tip, another app, another morning routine, another 5-step plan to feel less tired, maybe we need to stop and ask a different question altogether. Not how do I get more energy, but what is actually exhausting me? Think about what an average mind processes in a single day now. You wake up and within minutes you've already seen headlines about a war on one continent, an economic warning on another, and somebody's opinion about both. You check a group chat. You scan 3 or 4 notifications. You see a photo of someone's vacation. You see a photo of someone's grief. You see an advertisement for something you didn't know existed. You make a quick decision about what to eat. Another about what to wear. Another about whether to respond to that message now or later. And it's not even 8 in the morning. By lunch, your mind has handled more information than your grandparents processed in a week. By evening, you've had small flashes of opinion about politics, theology, parenting, food, climate. Celebrities you've never met and people you went to school with 20 years ago. You've compared yourself to strangers maybe 40 times without noticing. For almost all of human history, life didn't work this way. People knew the names of the people in their village. They heard news weeks late, if at all. Their circle of concern matched roughly the circle of people they could actually love or help. Silence was normal. Long evenings were normal. Sitting on a porch without a screen was normal. This isn't a complaint about technology. The point isn't that phones are evil or that we should all move to a farm. The point is simpler than that. The human mind has limits. God built those limits into us on purpose, and those limits haven't changed just because the world around us has. Go back to Genesis chapter 2 for a moment. The picture there is striking when you slow down on it. God forms the human from the dust of the ground, not from light, not from spirit, from dust, from something fragile and finite and small. He breathes life into that dust. And then almost immediately, the story tells us, This creature needs a garden to tend, a partner to be with, food to eat, sleep at the end of the day, and a Sabbath at the end of the week. That's the design. Embodied. Limited, needing rest, needing other people, needing quiet. So when you feel exhausted from a day where you didn't actually do that much, it might be worth considering something gentle. Sometimes tiredness isn't a sign that something is wrong with you. Sometimes it's a sign that you're carrying things your soul was never built to carry. There's a moment in Matthew chapter 11 where Jesus says something that has been quoted so often, it's almost easy to miss. Come unto me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. We tend to hear that as a soft, gentle invitation. And it is gentle, but it's also more specific than we usually notice. The phrase heavy laden in the original Greek paints a particular picture. It's the image of someone who has been loaded down, burdened, carrying weight that wasn't theirs to begin with, or weight that has slowly piled up until it's too much. It's not a word for someone who lifted something heavy once. It's a word for someone who has been carrying it for a long time and is starting to feel it in their bones. And here's what's worth sitting with. Jesus said this in the 1st century. No phones, no notifications, no 24-hour news cycle, no social media feeds, no group chats lighting up at midnight. And even then, he looked out at ordinary people, walking home from the market, going about their lives, and he recognized something in their faces. They were tired, quietly, invisibly tired, carrying things nobody else could see. So what was weighing them down? A lot of it was religious. The culture around them had built a careful system of rules and expectations on top of God's law. There were rules about how to keep Sabbath, rules about what counted as work, rules about washing, eating, tithing, who you could sit with, what you could touch, and underneath all of it, a constant low hum of pressure to measure up, to perform, to never get it quite wrong. The teachers of the law could tell you exactly how you were falling short. They could not really tell you how to rest. And when you slow down and look at our lives now, the weight isn't actually that different. It's just wearing a different costume. Be informed enough. Be productive enough. Be spiritual enough. Be present enough as a parent. Be successful enough at work. Be engaged enough with the news. Be healthy enough. Be on top of things enough. Nobody hands you a written list. The list is just in the air. You absorb it from 100 sources every day, and you carry it around without realizing you're carrying it. Jesus looks at people like this and says, "Come to me." He's not handing out another rule. He's asking something quieter. Are you willing to put some of this down? There's a kind of mental tiredness that doesn't look like anxiety from the outside. It doesn't feel like panic. It's not a racing heart or a sleepless night. It's quieter than that. It's just a low hum that never quite turns off. You're in the shower rehearsing a conversation you might have tomorrow. You're driving home and replaying something you said 3 days ago, wondering if it came out wrong. You're lying in bed at 11 at night, scrolling through news from a country you've never visited, about a situation you can't affect, while your shoulders slowly tighten without you noticing. You're worried about the kids, about money, about that thing the doctor mentioned, about your aging parents, about your job, about the church, about the world, about whether you're doing enough as a parent, about whether you'll have enough saved, about what's coming. And here's what's strange about it. It doesn't feel like anxiety. It feels like being responsible. It feels like being a thoughtful adult who pays attention. It feels like the price of caring. But a lot of it isn't responsibility. A lot of it is just worry wearing a serious face. Jesus said something about this. In Matthew chapter 6, he spent a long time on it. Look at the birds, he said. They don't store up grain. Look at the lilies. they don't spin thread, and your heavenly Father feeds them, clothes them, knows about them. He wasn't being sentimental. He wasn't saying nothing matters and you should be naive. He was carefully describing a different way of carrying the future. He was telling people who had real reasons to worry that worry itself was not going to add a single hour to their lives. Paul says something similar in Philippians chapter 4. Be careful for nothing. Old language for, don't be consumed with anxiety about anything. Instead, in prayer with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. And the peace of God, which passes understanding, will guard your heart and your mind. Notice that last word, mind. Paul knew that some of the deepest tiredness happens there. These aren't quick fixes. Jesus and Paul aren't handing you a verse to recite the next time worry shows up. They're describing something slower, a handoff. A daily, sometimes hourly, sometimes minute-by-minute act of giving something to a Father who actually sees it. This kind of trust isn't a feeling you can summon on a Tuesday morning. It's a practice. And like any practice, you learn it slowly. There's something draining about modern life that previous generations simply never had to deal with. You see other people's lives all day long. Not their actual lives. The version they've shaped and posted. Their vacations, their kitchens, their marriages, in the 3 seconds you catch on a screen. Their children, smiling on a Sabbath morning. Their bodies, their homes, their ministries, their apparent spiritual depth. Your great-grandparents knew maybe 100 people well. You scroll past 100 lives before breakfast. And it does something to the soul, slowly, that most of us don't notice while it's happening. This isn't only a problem out in the world. It happens inside the church too. Maybe especially there. You watch someone post a beautifully arranged family worship setup, and you think about your own evening. The kids half listening. Your spouse exhausted. The chapter you stumbled through while someone asked for water for the 3rd time. You hear someone share a testimony about a powerful answered prayer, and you quietly wonder why your prayers feel so ordinary. You see a friend leading a Bible study group, and you start measuring your walk with God against a version of theirs that may not even be real. And here's what nobody tells you. You're not just tired from your own life. You're tired from trying to live yours and also keep track of everyone else's. Paul says something in Galatians chapter 6 that's quieter than we usually notice. He tells the believers there, let every person examine their own work. Then he says, each one will bear his own load. He's not being harsh. He's being kind. He's saying, your portion is yours. Their portion is theirs. God hasn't asked you to carry both. This idea runs all the way through Scripture. When Peter asks Jesus, what about him? What about John? Jesus answers gently but directly. What is that to thee? Follow thou me. God measures faithfulness in the small assigned portion He's given you. Not in comparison to anybody else's portion. Not in comparison to the highlight reel of someone you've never actually met. Comparison is exhausting because it asks you to live multiple lives at the same time. Your own, plus the imagined lives of everyone you scroll past, plus the imagined version of yourself you think you should be matching. That's 3 or 4 lives running in your head before you've even left the house. Real rest starts, slowly, when you let other people's stories belong to them. And your story, with all its quiet ordinariness, belong to you. Something worth noticing about the Sabbath, before we say anything else about it. It wasn't given because people were burned out. Adam and Eve weren't exhausted. There was no inbox in Eden, no deadlines, no notifications, no noise. And yet the Sabbath shows up right there at the very beginning, in Genesis chapter 2. God finishes His work of creation, and then He rests on the 7th day. He blesses that day. He sets it apart, The first full day Adam and Eve experienced as human beings was a day of rest with God. That's not a small detail. It tells us something about how God designed us. The Sabbath wasn't a repair tool he invented later, when humans started getting tired. It was built into the structure of the world from the beginning. Before sin, before stress, before any of us needed it the way we need it now. God knew what kind of creature he had made. Move forward to Exodus chapter 20, when the commandment is formally given. Remember the Sabbath day, to keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor, and do all your work. But the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. In it you shall not do any work. There's a quiet logic underneath this. Once a week, you stop. Once a week you admit gently that the world will keep turning without you holding it together. Once a week, you set down the role of manager, fixer, producer, informed citizen, optimized human being, and you simply be present. Present with God, present with family, present with Scripture, present with creation, present with your own soul, which you may not have actually heard from all week. In our mental life, this is enormous. One full day where you are not being informed, not being productive, not optimizing anything, not comparing yourself to anyone, not performing for anyone, including yourself. One day where the rhythm is different, slower, quieter, centered on something other than your own striving. And here's something worth being careful about. Sabbath rest isn't a spiritual life hack for being less tired. It isn't a technique. It isn't a productivity trick disguised in religious language. It's a relationship with a God who made rest part of the structure of reality itself. A God who built into the week a regular meeting place between himself and the people he loves. The Sabbath teaches us something we slowly learn to carry into the other 6 days. A posture. A way of holding our lives. The Sabbath doesn't only happen on Sabbath. So what does this actually look like on a Tuesday afternoon? Not on Sabbath, when the rhythm of the day already invites stillness. On a regular weekday, with work piling up, kids needing things, dinner not yet planned, and a phone in your pocket that buzzes more than you'd like. What does it look like to live, in small ways? Like someone who actually believes God is still on the throne, and the world doesn't depend on me staying alert every single second. It might look like leaving the phone in another room during morning prayer. Not because the phone is evil, just because your attention is fragile, and the first 10 minutes of your day shape the rest of it more than you realize. It might look like not checking the news the moment your eyes open. Letting the world's emergencies wait until you've at least said good morning to God. It might look like driving somewhere with no podcast, no audiobook, no music, just silence. Letting your mind unclench for 15 minutes. You'd be surprised what surfaces in that quiet. It might look like taking 5 minutes at lunch to read a psalm slowly. Not to study it, just to let it speak. Instead of scrolling through the same 3 apps for the 14th time, it might look like going to bed without finishing that one more thing, trusting that the work will still be there tomorrow, and so will God, and so will you. None of this is a checklist. It's a posture. A small daily admission that you are not the one holding everything together. Look at how Jesus actually moved through his ministry. The Gospels show us a strange rhythm. He withdraws to lonely places to pray, even when crowds are looking for him. He sleeps in a boat during a storm that's terrifying his disciples. He stops to talk to one woman at a well while the disciples are worrying about lunch. He doesn't rush, even when the request is genuinely urgent. There's a comment somewhere in Ellen White's writing about this. She observed, with her usual quiet directness, that much of our exhaustion comes from trying to do God's work without God's pace. That phrase deserves a slow breath. None of these small practices will fix everything overnight. Years of mental tiredness don't unwind in a week. You'll still wake up tired some mornings. You'll still reach for the phone. You'll still rehearse conversations in the shower. But slowly, gently, something starts to repair. So let's go back to where we started. You wake up tired. You reach for the phone before your feet touch the floor. You sit down to pray, and your mind is somewhere else within 20 seconds. You go through the day carrying something invisible that you can't quite name. If you recognized yourself in that, I want to be honest with you. One Sabbath isn't going to undo years of mental fatigue. One prayer won't either. One new morning habit won't either. The kind of tiredness we've been talking about took a long time to build up, and it doesn't unwind in a week. But there's something steadier than any habit you could start tomorrow. Right now, while you're listening to this, Christ is in the heavenly sanctuary, interceding. Not for perfect people, for tired ones. For people who are quietly trying to walk faithfully through noisy lives. People who keep reaching for the phone and then feeling guilty about it. People who keep meaning to pray longer. People who keep showing up to Sabbath morning service, even though the week wore them out again. He sees you. He's not disappointed in your tiredness. Go back to those words in Matthew chapter 11 one more time. Listen slowly. Come unto me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you, and learn of me, for I am meek and lowly in heart. And ye shall find rest unto your souls. Rest unto your souls, not rest as escape. Not rest as a vacation from your responsibilities. Not rest as the day everything finally calms down. Because that day might never come on this side of eternity. Something different. An inner stillness that can exist even on a hard Tuesday, even with the unanswered messages, even with the kids loud in the next room, even with the news you can't fix. A quiet underneath everything. Because the one who holds the world is also holding you. So maybe this week, in some small way, you start putting something down. Not all of it. Just something. Maybe the phone stays in the other room for 10 minutes tomorrow morning. Maybe you let the car be silent on the way home. Maybe you go to bed without finishing one more task. And maybe, in those small spaces, you remember that the same Jesus who looked at tired people 2,000 years ago is still saying the same thing. Come to me, I'll give you rest.